Greetings, fellow Year 12 students of 2017, and welcome to my favourite 8 lines from the poetry of Wilfred Owen. I've chosen the first 8 lines of Anthem for Doomed Youth for this presentation. My presentation will involve a dramatic reading of these lines, an analysis of the way in which meaning and technique work together, and finally a comparison with other poems set for study. I hope you find my presentation helpful. Anthem for Doomed Youth by Wilfred Owen. What passing bells for these who die as cattle? Only the monstrous anger of the guns, only the stuttering rifle's rapid rattle can patter out their hasty orisons. No mockeries now for them, no prayers nor bells, nor any voice of mourning, save the choirs, the shrill demented choirs of wailing shells, and bugles calling for them from sad shires. I'd like to start my discussion with Owen's use of the sonnet. This is a beautiful classic form of poetry, and it follows wonderfully formal conventions that I really enjoy as a reader. These first 8 lines of the poem form the octave. And that octave is made up of 2 quatrains, and I basically just love the way Owen has taken something really formal and rigid and structured and has sort of made sense of the unstructured, chaotic, random destruction of war within this beautifully tight form. In the opening line, what passing bells for these who die as cattle, the use of as indicates to me a simile, a comparison. And if you're dying like cattle, as cattle, then your death is going to be anonymous and without any grieving or any loved one thinking about you. You're just another creature on this planet being slaughtered for human consumption, and in this case being consumed by war. So the question posed here, the rhetorical question, Owen's not asking the reader for an answer. His sonnet will answer that question. So it has embedded in it the answer. Wilfred Owen in the first quatrain personifies the weapons of war. So with personification, we have the monstrous anger, we have the stuttering of the guns and the rifles. So these objects of war, these inanimate objects, are demonstrating anger. They're stuttering. Stuttering is such a sort of powerful part of human speech, and if you've seen the King's Speech, you'll understand what I mean there. And blended with this personification, is the intensity of the alliteration, all of the R's and the T's. In a way, the enjambment is reinforced here. By the rattle and the patter. That T sound is very harsh, and the stuttering, all of these T's and the R's, they're not soft, warm sounds, they're harsh, brittle sounds, which mimics the meaning of the poem and reinforces it. In terms of unfamiliar language, orisons is probably the word that least sort of appeals to me in terms of general usage. It's a type of prayer when those of faith pray for nations or conflicts or political situations that are creating great suffering in the world. They're offering orisons, but these orisons are hasty, which is a great word. If you do something hastily, you do it without thought, without care, without any sort of investment. So in summary, the first quatrain of the octave of Owen's sonnet, Anthem for Doomed Youth, is all about bringing to life the weapons of war and their pure destructiveness. I really enjoy the shift in tone from the first to the second quatrain. Even though he's using a multitude of negatives, no mockeries, no prayers, nor bells, nor any voice of mourning, even though it's like no, 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 there's a much more sort of gentle contemplative tone here, because he brings to light the choirs. And again, we have the enjambment. Wherever Owen uses enjambment, we know that he has something especially vital and important to communicate about the pity and horror and pure destructive evil of war. So there's no voice of mourning. And in my imagination, I see Owen looking back at his former sort of charmed life in working in a parish. And the voices of mourning can be very healing, but in this case, the voice of mourning, except, like save is an antiquated way of saying except for the choirs. So it sort of sets up where we think, hey, the choirs must be the voice of angels in chorus, but as the comma and dash indicate, these are shrill, demented choirs. And those two words, to me, pack the greatest punch of these 8 lines. People who are shrill of voice have lost all control, they've lost all reason. It's like blind, mad rage. And demented is beyond any sort of imbalance. If a creature is demented, they've lost all sense of reason. So shrill and demented together, that's what the choir is made up of, not of beautiful angelic voices of praise, but of wailing shells. So the personification, I picture a choir and I picture peace. Wilfred Owen, due to his experience of the First World War, pictures the choir that he would have once loved and pictures it made up of wailing shells. And wailing, you think of the wailing walls in the Middle East. Well, I do. And wailing is the sort of deepest grief. So wailing, mourning, the use of these verbs, it's all about action, stuttering, calling, all of these verbs that are a call to action, but all there is devastation and destruction. So In the final line, the personification of the sad shires is what really impacts me, because it's the personification of, say, the whole of the Central Coast in our case. These shires, when every single person is affected by what's happening, and the calling, the longing of the wives and the mothers and the brothers and the uncles and the grandparents and all of those people back in these sad, sad shires. And the bugles, I can hear the bugles when I read this poem. The Anzac Day commemorations, the sound of the bugle always impacts me the most on that day. So essentially, what stands out to me in this poem is that balance between the ferocity of war and that inner contemplation of the spirit, that all of the faithful aspects of his life have just gone, that he's now consumed by the machinery of war personified. I enjoy this, or I not really enjoy, but appreciate this poem much more than, say, Insensibility, in that for me that poem has all of the anger and confrontation, but it doesn't have that beautiful, delicate structure of a sonnet. And I really appreciate the contrast between the sonnet form, which was traditionally associated with love and friendship, and the brutality of war. So when I'm looking at these 8 lines and why they speak to me, it is the combination of faith and tradition with contemplation and brutality. I wish you well in your 8 lines, and I hope that my analysis of these 8 lines has been helpful for you, and I look forward to enjoying yours. Thank you for your time and your consideration of my analysis.